The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and the sad little bouquet of grocery store carnations I'd bought myself 2 days earlier when I checked in. I remember staring at those flowers while a nurse adjusted my IV, thinking how stupid I'd been to buy them. Like I was setting a table for guests who weren't coming. My daughter was sleeping on my chest. 6 pounds, 4 ounces. A tiny pink mouth, and a fuzz of dark hair, and the most serious little frown I'd ever seen. Like she'd come out already disappointed in the world. I'd named her Wren. I'd been saving that name for years. The phone on my nightstand had been silent since 6 a.m. It was now almost 3 in the afternoon. I'd sent the family group text at 4:87 that morning. She's here. 6 pounds, 4 O's. Mercy West, room 312. I'd attached a photo of Wren wrapped in the white and blue hospital blanket, her eyes closed, her fist curled under her chin. I'd looked at that text every 20 minutes for 10 hours. My mother had reacted with a heart emoji at 7:13 a.m. That was it. That was everything I'd received. The nurse, a woman named Teresa who had 3 grandkids and showed me pictures while she helped me to the bathroom, kept glancing at the empty chair by the window. The first day she'd asked, gentle as anything, "Is your husband on his way, hon?" I'd told her there was no husband, just a sperm donor and a 5-year plan and the savings account I'd been building since I was 24. She'd nodded like she got it. The second day she asked about my mom. I'd said she was busy. Teresa didn't ask again. That afternoon, around 4, I finally called. My mother picked up on the 5th ring, and there was loud music in the background. Laughter. The kind of brittle, performative laughter that follows a champagne toast. "Mom?" I said. "Where are you?" "Oh, honey," she said, and her voice had that careful tone she used when she was about to tell me something she knew would hurt me but had decided wasn't worth softening. I meant to call. "We're at Maple Grove. Your sister's grand opening. Everyone's here." I closed my eyes. Maple Grove was the boutique pet spa my younger sister had opened that weekend in a strip mall outside Charlotte. Pet spa. I want to be clear about what I mean by that. It was a storefront where, for $95, you could have your Shih Tzu given a blueberry facial and a paw pad massage. My sister had been talking about it for 2 years. Our parents had given her $60,000 in startup capital. I had given her $3,000 because she'd cried at Thanksgiving about her credit card debt and I'd folded the way I always folded. "The baby came," I said. "I texted you all this morning." "I know, sweetie. We saw the picture. She's gorgeous. We just couldn't make it work today." "Your sister has been planning this for so long and the photographer was coming and you know how she gets." I knew how she got. I had spent 31 years knowing how she got. "Mom, I had a baby, by myself, in a hospital." "Don't make this about you, Camille," she said, and her voice sharpened the way it always did when she felt cornered. "Your sister is launching a business. This is a milestone for our family." I hung up. I'd never hung up on my mother before. My hand was shaking so badly I dropped the phone on the blanket. Wren stirred and made a small noise, and I cried, finally, for the first time since the contractions started 40 hours earlier. Not pretty crying. The ugly kind, where your face contorts and your nose runs and you can't breathe. Teresa came in 20 minutes later with a heat pack and didn't say anything. She just sat down in the empty chair and put her hand on my knee through the blanket. I'll remember that hand for the rest of my life. Let me back up. My name is Camille Bowen. I'm 31 years old. I work as a senior pharmacist at a regional hospital network in Charlotte, North Carolina. I make $142,000 a year before bonuses, which I tell you not to brag, but because money is the spine of this whole story, and you need to understand it. I have one younger sister. Her name is Devin. She's 28. She's been, for as long as I can remember, the family's project. Devin was the pretty one. I was the smart one. That was the trade we got handed when we were kids. And like most childhood trades, it was lopsided in ways that took me decades to understand. Pretty came with attention, indulgence, second chances. Smart came with expectations. Pretty got a car at 16. Smart got a lecture about scholarships. Pretty failed 2 semesters of community college and got a check for a fresh start. Smart paid her own way through pharmacy school with loans she finished paying off at 29. By the time I was 26, I was the family ATM. It started small. A loan for Devin's rent when she got fired from the salon. Then her car payment when she couldn't make it. Then a loan of $7,000 for some MLM essential oils scheme my mother swore was going to change everything. I never saw a dime of any of it back. When I brought it up once, my father told me I was being petty. You're the one with the steady job, Cammy. You don't even have kids. What are you going to do with all that money? Just sit on it? I was 27. I had endometriosis. I had a savings goal of $100,000 for a house down payment. I had, by then, given Devin almost $18,000 in untracked loans. My father said I didn't have kids like that was a moral failing. Like it disqualified me from having my own financial life. When I was 28, I decided I was going to have a baby on my own. I'd been single for 2 years. I was tired of waiting for a partner who didn't seem to be coming. I started seeing a fertility specialist. I picked a donor. I started saving in earnest, the kind of saving where you eat lentil soup 4 nights a week and turn the heat down to 63. I didn't tell my family for a year and a half. When I finally did, at a Sunday dinner the previous March, my mother put her fork down very carefully and said, "Camille, that's a very selfish thing to do to a child." My father said, "What about us? What about what your mother and I want?" Devin said, "Oh my God, you're going to be one of those moms." I still don't know what that meant. I left dinner that night and drove home and sat in my apartment parking lot for an hour. Then I went upstairs and emailed my fertility doctor to confirm my next appointment. I got pregnant on the 3rd round of IUI, October, the previous year. I was 29 weeks along when my sister announced she was opening Maple Grove. My parents had a meeting with their financial planner the next day. They liquidated part of their retirement account. I, 8 months pregnant and gestating a human being entirely alone, was not consulted. So that's where I was, on the 3rd day after Ren was born, when I hung up on my mother. Alone in a hospital room holding my daughter, and finally understanding something I'd been refusing to understand my whole life. They were never going to choose me. They were never going to even consider choosing me. I was discharged on a Friday. I'd ordered a car seat installer to come to the hospital because I didn't trust myself to do it right. And I didn't have anyone to ask. The Uber driver who took us home was a man named Hosea who kept the radio off and drove like he had a glass face in the back. I tipped him $40 and cried in the elevator going up to my apartment. The apartment was quiet in a way it had never been. I'd set up the nursery in September. Pale yellow walls, a white crib, a rocking chair I'd assembled myself with a glass of wine in my hand. I put Ren down in the crib for the first time and stood there watching her breathe for what felt like an hour. That night, around 11, my phone started lighting up. My mother. 2 missed calls. A text, "Camille, we need to talk. Please call me back tomorrow morning. It's important." My father. 1 text, "Your mother is upset. Call her, Devin." A photo of herself in front of the Maple Grove sign holding a glass of champagne. Caption, "Big day for the Bowen girls." I didn't respond to any of it. I fed Ren. I tried to sleep. I lay awake until 4 a.m. listening to her breathe. The next morning, my mother called at 9:02. I let it go to voicemail. She called again 9:32. I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 9:17 and 9:33. And 9:51 at 10:14, she sent a text, "I'm coming over." I felt my stomach drop. I texted back, "Don't." The response came in under a minute, "We need to talk now. This is a family matter. I'll be there at noon." I read that text 3 times. This is a family matter. As though my newborn daughter, sleeping on a boppy 2 feet away from me, was not a family matter. As though my body, still bleeding and stitched, was not a family matter. I called Adina. Adina is my best friend. She's a hospitalist at the same hospital network. We met during my residency and have spent the last 7 years building the kind of friendship where she has a key to my apartment and I have her family's Wi-Fi password. She'd been at the hospital when Ren was born, in scrubs, holding my hand to transition because she'd happened to be on shift. She'd cried when she saw the baby. She'd told me, very gently, that I needed to think hard about what I let my mother do to me going forward. "She's coming over," I told Adina, "at noon. She wants to talk." "About what?" "I don't know." She said it's a family matter. There was a long pause on the line. Then Adina said, "Camille, listen to me. Whatever it is, you don't owe her anything today. You just had a baby. If she shows up, you're going to feel obligated. So either don't open the door or I'm coming over too. I told her to come. Adina arrived at 11:30 with a tray of homemade lasagna, 2 bottles of LaCroix, and a hardness in her face I'd never quite seen before. She set the food in my kitchen, washed her hands, and picked up Ren without asking. She kissed her forehead. She sat down on my couch and looked at me and said, "Whatever she says, you don't have to answer today. You can say I need to think about it." That's a complete sentence. My mother knocked at 12,004. She was alone, which surprised me. She was wearing a navy blazer and her good earrings, like she was going to a meeting. She walked in and looked at Adina, and her face did a small, ugly thing. Then she looked at the baby. "Oh," she said. "Oh, she's so little." She held her arms out. I didn't move. "What did you want to talk about, Mom?" She lowered her arms. She sat down across from me. She took a long breath, the kind she always took before delivering something she practiced. "Camille, I know yesterday wasn't ideal. I know you're upset. But I want you to understand what's been happening on our end. Your sister put everything into Maple Grove. Everything. Your father and I are stretched very thin from helping her get it off the ground, and the first quarter is critical. The grand opening cost almost $12,000 by the time we accounted for the photographer and the catering and the influencer your sister hired. And we have a tax bill coming we weren't expecting." I waited. I had learned, somewhere in the last 24 hours, the power of not filling silences. She kept going. "We were hoping. Your father and I were talking, and we were hoping that maybe you could help. As a one-time thing, we were thinking 40,000. We could call it a loan if it makes you more comfortable." Adina, on the couch behind me, made a sound I can only describe as the start of a laugh that she swallowed. I looked at my mother. I really looked at her, maybe for the first time. She was 62. She had nice hair. She had spent my entire life choosing my sister over me and feeling not just justified but virtuous about it because Devin needed her more and need was the currency she understood. "Mom," I said, "I had a baby 2 days ago. By myself." "I know, sweetheart, but nobody came. Honey, we talked about this. The opening, nobody came." She paused. She looked at me with the practiced patience of someone who has decided the conversation has gone off script. "Camille, I'm trying to talk to you about something real. Your sister is going to lose the business if we can't cover the next 2 quarters of operating costs. This is real. We need you to step up. I just had a baby by myself, and you have a steady job. You make more than your father and I combined. You bought this apartment in cash. You've been saving for years. Camille, you have so much. Your sister has nothing. Why is this hard? I want to tell you that I had some perfect speech prepared. I didn't. What I had was 48 hours of postpartum hormones, 3 days of broken sleep, 12 hours of having watched my best friend make me a sandwich because I couldn't stand at the counter long enough to make one myself, and 31 years of being treated like a wallet with a heartbeat. What came out was this. No. She blinked. "Excuse me? No. I'm not giving you $40,000. I'm not giving you $40,000. I'm not giving Devin anything ever again. Not a loan. Not a gift, not a cosign. Nothing. Camille. And I want you to leave." She stared at me. Then she did something I'll never forget. She laughed. Not a real laugh. A short, disbelieving exhale, like I'd just told her something so absurd she couldn't process it. "You're being hormonal," she said. "I'm going to come back in a few days when you're thinking more clearly." Adina stood up. I don't know what my face looked like, but my mother stood up too. She picked up her purse. At the door, she turned around. "Your sister's business is going to fail because of you," she said. "I want you to remember that." She left. I shook for an hour. Adina made me eat a sandwich. She held Ren while I cried. The siege started Monday. It went in phases. The first phase was guilt. Long voicemails from my mother, her voice trembling, talking about how family is everything and how my father couldn't sleep and how Devin was barely keeping it together and how this wasn't who they'd raised me to be. Texts from my father about responsibility and what kind of woman abandons her family. A voicemail from my Aunt Cheryl, my mother's older sister, who I hadn't talked to in 2 years, calling to check in on me. The second phase was Devin. She showed up at my apartment on Wednesday with a basket of muffins from the bakery near Maple Grove and tears in her eyes. I watched her on the doorbell camera. I didn't open the door. She sat in the hallway for 20 minutes. She left a note that said, "Camille, please. I love you. I need my sister." I want to tell you that note didn't get to me. It did. I held it in my hand for a long time. Then I put it in a drawer and went and looked at my sleeping daughter and remembered that no one in that family had asked, in any of these calls, how the baby was, how I was, whether I had stitches, whether I was eating, whether I could lift the car seat with my abdominal muscles still healing. Not one person. The third phase was the showing up. Saturday morning, 12 days after Ren was born, I woke up to the doorbell ringing. Then ringing again. Then someone pounding. I looked at the camera. My mother, my father, Devin, Aunt Cheryl, Devin's fiancé Travis, who I'd met twice. 5 adults in my hallway at 8:14 in the morning. I picked up the intercom. "Go home. Camille, open the door." My mother, "We're a family. We're going to talk about this like a family. Go home, Mom. Camille Renee Bowen, you open this door right now." I hung up the intercom. I turned off the doorbell ringer. I sat on my couch with Ren on my chest and listened to them pound on my door for 35 minutes. At one point, Devin was crying. At one point, my father shouted my name loud enough that my neighbor across the hall opened her door, looked at them, and went back inside. Eventually, they left. I sat on the couch for another hour. Then I called Adina. Then I called my lawyer. This is the part where I have to tell you something that has, in retrospect, made the rest of my life possible. 6 months earlier, when I was 4 months pregnant, I had drafted a will. I had also restructured the trust I'd set up for my daughter. And on a hunch I couldn't quite articulate, I had finally cataloged every dollar I had ever given to my family. Every Venmo, every check, every bank transfer, every credit card I had paid off for them. The number, including interest at the federal short-term rate, was $163,000. I had a lawyer named Imani Okafor whose office was downtown and who specialized in family financial disputes. She'd helped me draft the trust. When I called her that Saturday afternoon and explained what was happening, she was quiet for a moment. "Camille," she said, "do you want them out of your life?" I cried for a minute. Then I said yes. "Then here's what we're going to do." Imani drafted a cease and desist letter. It went out on Tuesday morning, certified mail, to my parents and to Devin. It instructed them that all future communication had to go through her office, that any approach to my home or workplace would be considered harassment, and that I was formally calling in the loans I had documented over the previous 7 years. $163,000. Payment plan negotiable. Failure to engage would result in civil litigation. I changed the locks on my apartment. I changed my phone number. I filed paperwork with my hospital's HR department flagging my family as people who were not authorized to contact me at work. I removed them from every emergency contact form I'd ever filled out. I closed the joint checking account I'd opened with my mother at 17, which she'd been using for, I would later discover, 8 years to pay her gym membership. I blocked them on everything. The first month after the letter went out was the worst month of my life. My mother left voicemails on Imani's office line that Imani forwarded to me without comment. They were ranting, then crying, then threatening, then crying again. My father sent one email that just said, "You disgust me." Devin sent a long Instagram message from a burner account that I read once and then deleted. Aunt Cheryl posted a Facebook post about ungrateful daughters and the age of girl bosses that 14 people I'd known since childhood liked. I deactivated my Facebook. And then, slowly, the noise stopped. Ren is now 19 months old. She has my eyes and a laugh that sounds like a hiccup and an obsession with a stuffed orca named Beans. She walks. She says up and milk and mama and inexplicably, bagel. She has never met my parents. She has never met my sister. I don't know what they tell people. I don't know what they tell themselves. I assume Devin has a story she's perfected at parties, the one about her cold older sister who abandoned the family during a hard time. I assume my mother cries about me at her book club. I don't think about it as often as I used to. Maple Grove closed 8 months after the grand opening. I heard about it from a former coworker who saw it on the local news. This story was about a small business that had failed due to insufficient cash flow. My parents took out a second mortgage. My sister moved back home. I felt nothing. That's the part I want to be honest about. I expected to feel vindicated. I expected to feel sad. I felt nothing, the way you feel nothing, about a building you used to walk past on a street you no longer live on. $143,000 of the money I'd loaned them is still outstanding. Imani thinks we'd win in court, but the collection would be ugly and slow and my parents don't have liquid assets to seize. I told her to drop it. I'd rather pay her hourly than spend another year of my life thinking about their bank accounts. The $20,000 I did get back came in chunks, from my mother, sent through Imani, in the second and third months after the letter. I think she did it because she thought it would soften me. It didn't. I put it in Ren's college fund. Last month, I took Ren to the beach for the first time. Just the two of us. I rented a little cottage in the Outer Banks for 4 days. She wore a sun hat that was too big for her and screamed with joy every time a wave touched her feet. I took 243 photos. I sent 6 of them to Adina, who was Ren's godmother. On the second night, after I put her to bed, I sat on the cottage porch with a glass of wine and listened to the ocean. I thought about the hospital room, the carnations, the way my mother's voice had sounded on the phone, that brittle laughter behind her. I thought about the woman I was at 31, dropping her phone on a blanket, sobbing into a newborn's hair, and I felt such tenderness for her that I almost couldn't bear it. She didn't know yet what was on the other side. She thought the worst thing in the world was having a baby alone in a hospital and watching her family choose someone else. She was wrong. The worst thing in the world is spending 31 years being chosen second, then third, then last, then not at all, and convincing yourself that this is what love is, and arranging your whole life around earning a place at a table where there was never going to be a seat for you. The best thing in the world, it turns out, is leaving that table, walking out the door, and building, in a small apartment with yellow nursery walls, a family of 2 where one person is always going to be chosen first. I tell Ren I love her about 40 times a day. I tell her she is wanted. I tell her she was chosen. I tell her sometimes, in the dark, when she's almost asleep and can't understand the words yet, that her mother spent a long time learning how to say no and that no is one of the most loving words there is. She doesn't know what I mean yet. Someday she will, and she will never, ever have to learn it the way I did. I think about that hospital room a lot, even now. The carnations on the windowsill, the empty chair, the phone that wouldn't ring, and I think about how every single thing that happened after that day was the direct, traceable consequence of choices people had been making for 31 years, including me. My parents didn't wake up one morning and decide to skip the birth of their first grandchild. They had been practicing for decades. Every time they handed Devin a check while telling me to be patient, they were practicing. Every time my father said I didn't need money because I didn't have kids, he was practicing. Every time my mother called my pregnancy selfish, she was rehearsing the version of herself who would, 6 months later, sit in my living room and ask for $40,000 while my newborn slept 3 feet away. None of it was a surprise. It was a harvest. And here's the part that took me the longest to understand. I planted half that field myself. Every loan I gave Devin, every silence I swallowed at Sunday dinner, every time I told myself that being the responsible one meant being the endlessly available one, I was teaching them exactly how to treat me. People don't respect what we give them for free. They learn what we'll accept, and they meet us right there at the bottom. The morning I said no to my mother, my voice was shaking and my stitches hurt, and I had not slept more than 2 hours in a row in 4 days. I want you to understand that strength doesn't always feel like strength. Sometimes it feels like sitting on a couch with a baby on your chest, terrified, and saying one small word anyway. Sometimes nerve looks like a postpartum woman drinking lukewarm water and refusing to fund a pet spa. What I learned in that apartment is that being a good person and being a useful person are not the same thing. For most of my life, I had confused them. I thought if I kept giving, I was being good. But you can't be good to people who have decided you exist for their convenience. You can only be useful to them. And the day you stop being useful, you find out very quickly how much love was ever really there. The mind that built my career in the savings account and the nursery with the yellow walls was the same mind that, for 31 years, accepted being treated like a vending machine. Intelligence isn't the same as wisdom. Wisdom is intelligence that has finally listened to the part of you that's been quietly screaming, "If you take one thing from my story, take this." Look at where your money goes and look at who shows up when you need them. And notice when those two lists don't overlap. Then do something about it. Not in anger, in clarity. The people who love you will be on both lists. The people who aren't, you can love from a distance or not at all. And either choice is allowed. I chose not at all. My daughter sleeps better for it, so do I.